So,
Okay. Good morning and welcome to Grace and Stephen Gooby from Blissful Journey Wellness. Hi, good morning.
Morning,
good
Mendy.
morning. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. So I think we should have done this already a long time, but we got to it now to do this
Better
interview.
late than, yeah, better late than never.
Better late than never. So I would say both of you are in the breathwork, I would say breathwork gurus, especially Stephen has a book coming out. And Grace, I worked with you already a couple of years ago. We know each other for some time. So I'll
Hmm.
start with you, Grace, first, and then we'll go to Stephen. As far as I know you mentioned, I remember way back that breathwork totally shaped you as a new person. And I think he also mentioned to me, if I remember correctly, you were afraid even to be in public and talking in public, and here you're sitting and talking in public. And I think that happened also in the process of breathwork.
Oh,
So
yeah.
tell us a little bit what intrigued you to breathwork, what got you there, and I know a lot of good things happened to you. I think you met Stephen also in breathwork.
Yes, I would say that breathwork changed my life in many ways. So, over the years, it's just one thing after another. So, yeah, I used to be really terrified to speak in public, and I used to get very anxious. I would get nauseous, my voice would shake, my hands would sweat. Sometimes I couldn't, the words would just stick right here. Uh, and I had a really hard time with it. And in a breathwork session, I had a memory that came up. And this memory was from when I was a child. And I was sitting on the lap of someone who I knew loved me. But for some reason that day, they were teasing me and laughing about it. And I was getting upset. I was probably 2 years old. I was getting upset, and I had asked her to stop, and she kept going. She was having a great time, and I was getting more upset. And when so I said, "Shut up." And when I said, "Shut up," I got slapped across the face. And so this memory came up during a breathwork session, and it suddenly made sense. My whole life suddenly made sense because I learned, as I was looking at it as an observer during the breath work. So it was like I was watching it all unfold. And the meanings that came through were that it wasn't safe for me to speak up for myself, that it wasn't okay for me to be angry. It wasn't safe to be angry. It wasn't safe to set boundaries. Um, and it just shaped my life from that point forward. So it shut down my expression. So I was terrified to speak in front of even my classroom in school, um, for a book report, something silly like that. It was frightening. And then through all my relationships, when you can't set boundaries, it's not a very good relationship. So that explained a lot of the failed relationships that I had been through. And I was able to heal through the breath work and through that awareness, and just to continue to grow. And yeah, once you can
This is
heal.
this is this is huge. This is huge. So there's two parts. There's some questions that I have in the story, which definitely will help our listeners. But first of all, even to point out that sometimes we don't even notice what happens to us as a child, and this is what we call developmental trauma, and what really where it can hold you back, and we don't even realize at that time that it means something, and then later this memory comes in and say, "Wow, this is where like it's huge." Like people don't think, oh, nothing ever happened to me. Yeah, but this nothing did something. And definitely. Now, how much time would you say that it took you to get to this memory after months, years?
I would say, probably within 6 months of
6 months.
of beginning breath work.
Beginning breath work. That's amazing. You know, it's important because always people are going to ask after the first session, second session. Well, you know, first of all, they have that expectation that by itself kills it. You know, but I want to achieve something. I want to get somewhere, and
It,
time time will do the thing. Time will do the thing. That's important.
everyone wants the magic pill,
Magic pill.
and it isn't there. It's not out there.
It's not out
I
there.
I think it not only takes, I would say, between 3 and 6 full breathwork sessions to get the restrictions opened up, but it takes a lifelong practice. It's a daily practice. We breathe
Hmm.
a good, like 25 minutes a day. It's a part of our daily practice.
Out of practice.
Yeah.
And how long do you do, for example, a regular session with a client?
So a regular session is the actual breathing time is about an hour.
I don't know.
Yeah, we have some
That is
time to talk a little bit before that and a little
before,
bit of time after.
after that.
Yeah.
And would you say that everybody can do that hour, or
Well,
Go ahead.
not necessarily. We often meet clients who may have some physical issues, or they may have some emotional trauma symptoms, in their past. So their resilience is not quite, able to do a full session. It does take a lot of physical work, but it's also sometimes taxing to the emotional state of the breather. So what we do is, for those folks, we kind of step in to the protocol gently. And sometimes it may be so, they may be in such a fragile state that we don't do a real integrative somatic session. We start with basic yogic breathing just to teach the mechanics and just gentle enough so that they can kind of gradually move and build up their resilience to where they can do a longer, more intense session.
and how much time would you say that can take for a client?
Well, we've had one who has gone on for a year, and he's made significant progress. Sometimes it takes just a few sessions. All of a sudden, the resilience just kicks in. So there's no real pattern that we see. We just go with wherever the client is at that time.
Right. Everyone's different too. And you certainly don't
Uh,
want to go so fast that they are re-traumatized.
Mhm.
So we come from a
right,
trauma-informed perspective, and we really just have to meet people where they are.
right. What you're saying is a very important point, meaning you cannot just be a breathwork facilitator without being trauma informed and noticing what's happening in the body and what's happening with the person. Because, yeah, I've heard from others, and I get phone calls of issues, and that's an underlining factor, definitely underlining factor. Um, what would you say the most people come for when they're looking for breathwork? What are they looking for?
I don't know.
It's
I don't know if there is a pattern. I mean, everybody's different. There are
Yeah.
Means
certain major ones we could talk about. Some people are just curious. When I started, it was a lot of young people coming, and they were just excited about what they thought was a cool experience. But at the same time, I had one client who had serious medical issues. One was schizophrenia. I was working with her doctor. So they come from all
So when
different.
somebody has schizophrenia, first of all, you definitely screen the client before they come to find out if they're
Exactly,
taking any
yeah.
medications and if they're in touch with a psychiatrist.
Hmm.
And you wouldn't probably get permission from a psychiatrist before you do that
That's
to have
exactly
a
what happened.
clearance.
Yeah.
Because if not, yeah, definitely. Um,
We have
and
some people who come. I've had people recently who've come for they've done psychedelics and they were incomplete. And so they, you know,
meaning they didn't do any integration after
right.
that, which is a mistake as well in the psychedelic if they do.
Mhm.
Right.
Which,
So that,
yeah.
yeah, breath work is great, is a great integration tool with that. So, and not everybody gets that. So,
How much time frame would you say after a psychedelic to do a breath work? Like, what's the because it's known that after a psychedelic, there's a small window of integration.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
They've been different spans
different
of time.
different
So
spans.
We see the most progress, the greatest depth of integration when people do a cluster of sessions in our retreats. So for a time we were doing 5 and 6 day retreats, and a bunch of those people had done psychedelics and came all together with that same background. And we noticed a similar arc as far as integration goes. So maybe after 4 days, they were just quite different to each other and to themselves. So they,
And what would you say is the benefit when you do, like I said, a 5 day retreat versus just doing for somebody for an hour? What explain what is really the difference
well, they
going
build
for
upon each other, Mendy. If you have one session that's isolated, yeah, you might get some benefits. You may feel relaxed and feel really good. How deep is the integration? Well, we don't know. Sometimes people bring up a whole lot of stuff, and other times the integration is more gentle. But when you cluster these sessions together, you get an additive or synergistic effect to them. So if you had maybe 5 sessions spaced apart once a month, you might get this much. 5 sessions in 2.5 days, well, it may be this much. So in 5 days, we tend to do 10 full sessions and then mini sessions. So there's a lot of additive effects from just grouping these sessions in close proximity.
and it's more than just breath work. When we do a retreat, I may bring in some somatic practices. There's a lot more to it.
do you want to elaborate on that? Like as far as
So sure. So we do yeah, we may bring in I may do some guided meditations. We may bring in some more movement, some exercises where we get around and we move.
And that might include
Um,
yoga too, dance and yoga movements.
so we may also do a letting go ceremony with the fire pit. There's all kinds of things you can do at a
And,
retreat that it's very meaningful for people who are going through different transitions and on their healing journeys.
and we have to include sound. Sound is very somatic. It has an effect on the body, so sound is very integral to what we do.
definitely, definitely sound is a very one of the very important factors in somatic work. Tone of voice and all that.
Mhm.
Definitely.
And we do bowls. We do work with crystal bowls in a very intentional way, not just random bang bang cling. So we have a protocol there when we use it and how we use it. So yeah, there's anything that is somatic, we can bring it in if it seems to benefit the client.
And Stephen, tell us a little bit because you have what is your background and how did you get to breathwork? And I know that you have like a whole, you have a new book coming out and you have science behind it.
Yeah.
People want to know, what's really happening in a breathwork and what's going on.
Well, I guess it all started. I was always science minded. So when I started, I was in the IT industry, which is a different science, but I got to be an herbalist like Grace is an herbalist. And then after that, I went a year of training and then a year of teaching massage therapy, and that was 5 different disciplines. So I got quite good in that area, and that's integral to our somatic approach. You have to know the body, or rather the body mind. But when I was at the end of my massage training, a colleague said, "Oh, I'm doing this thing called breath work, and you've got to try it." So she had gotten certified and gave me a session. And after my first session, I said, "Well, I'm sold. I have to do this." And this was 2001. So I got into the training in 2001, and I was working on the public as a student in 2001. So I got certified soon after. So this is my 26th year in a professional practice. So little by little, I've learned more and brought more things in. And the science is very important. As you mentioned, the book is full of science. Let me get the book for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just
Do it.
got this today. We finally got the
Wow.
hardcover version. So it's
Now I see it here because
big.
I just see here the content and I see that so much and I said, how thick is that book going to be?
Oh yes, that's right. I
Wow.
gave you the table of
Gave
contents.
me the
Yeah.
table of contents.
Yeah. So Yeah, this is full of science, the fundamentals, and then the applications that follow from that. So there's a lot of technique, there's history, there's a whole lot of safety and medical information in there too. For instance, working with pregnant women, we always used to say in our training, we always used to hear anyway, I didn't particularly believe it, but we always used to say, oh, there's no contraindications, anybody can do this. No, there are contraindications. We have to be careful of clients who have this condition or that condition. So there's the largest chapter in that book is called States and Conditions, and it's about various diseases and syndromes and conditions, and not all are disease. I mean, aging isn't a disease. With the separate chapters on pregnancy,
So when you're saying, let's
cancer.
for example take pregnancy, what would you say as far as breathwork for pregnancy? In what semester are we talking about?
Well, it could be fine in any trimester, but the discussion gets a little complex. It all depends on one, their health history, two, how their pregnancy is moving along, three, what techniques we apply, and even four, how we position the client. So it used to be the only thing we knew back then, or we were taught, is oh, we could do it in any trimester. We knew not to touch certain areas. When we do hands-on work, we know not to touch certain areas. Positioning was taken into account, certainly. After the first trimester, you don't want to have somebody being elevated, even though that is the starting point for most every session we do, because it's easier to breathe. However, as a pregnant client moves into the second and third trimesters, we don't want to breathe in that position. So as a massage therapist would do, we lie them down horizontally on their left side. And that is the protocol. But it's so much more than that. If somebody has pre-existing conditions such as hypertension or a thyroid condition, we would say, no, there actually is a risk there. We will not do a session, at least an intense integrative somatic session. You can always
Why
do
would
some light breathing, some yogic breathing with them just to help them relax, because during pregnancy, eventually that sympathetic state does increase in intensity, towards term. So we don't want to make it too intense. There are other times where we don't want to have a session until months after a pregnancy. People with connective tissue disorders, they may have delivered their child, but if they're not right for full exercise again, I would wait for the doctor to say, yeah, you can do sessions again. So there's so many aspects to working with a pregnant client. So you really have to know what their state is and what the conditions actually mean for them, what to do, what not to do, and sometimes you just don't do a session.
what about people that have high blood pressure?
High blood pressure is generally okay. One thing we don't want to do is lie them down flat.
Elevated a little bit.
Oh yes, any cardiovascular or pulmonary disorders, we want to have people elevated, again, because it's easier to breathe. If somebody were lying horizontal, especially if they were overweight, obesity is another factor. There's a condition called orthopnea, where if people lie down horizontal and they suddenly have trouble breathing in that position, it'll happen easily within 2 minutes. You have to elevate them. But so we take the precaution. If somebody has a history of asthma or mild COPD or moderate COPD, or they have high blood pressure, even if it's controlled by medication, we want to elevate them. But they could have other cardiovascular disorders too. So we have to know that. But as far as hypertension goes, one thing I saw years ago, and intake is very important. We always want to know the health history, and health history is part of a total intake procedure. Well, I did this group, and I had asked everybody. It was a workshop, and I had asked if there's any cardiovascular issues, any pulmonary issues, anything that might affect this session. Do you have any pain? Is anybody pregnant? I went through that before we even had formal forms. This is early. Well, that person ended up bleeding from their nose. And I said, well, that was very unusual. But back then, the place that I was working, they didn't have any place to elevate, so everybody was horizontal. And these are the old days, the old ways. Well, this person started bleeding from the nose, so I found a place to elevate them. And he said, well, I have high blood pressure. And I thought to myself, oh, well, I did ask you if there are any issues. So yeah, what this what the more somatic, intense sessions do is elevate blood pressure. We are exercising after all to a certain degree. So if somebody does have high blood pressure, you don't want to increase it that much. It's hardly ever an issue, but if somebody does have that, you want to at least elevate them. Okay? It's just one simple.
Is there any type of, I don't know, let's call it disease or anything that you would turn down the breath work for them or say it's not for them?
Well, sometimes things get a little too serious. If we could work with people with neurological disorders for things there are no cure, and eventually, we might work toward an end of strength, keeping the muscles stronger, working the diaphragm, but eventually there simply might be no reason to continue. But in cases of acute activation of a disease, it's simply too risky. We have people with a blood disease called porphyria, and when that activates, they're simply not ready for a session. We need to have them recover. They that disease kind of goes up and down. Chronic means it's acute, and then it's not, and then it's acute again. So we have to be cognizant of when, and many times they'll tell us, "I'm not ready." That the symptoms are just too debilitating, so you just don't do a session.
Right, if they tell it to you, then it's great. The question is, what does a practitioner have to really be, precautious before that to know, not to allow it, or at least, ask a doctor. And definitely, we know in any type of psychosis or any type of thing, that's where we need to
Mm-hmm.
ask. Meaning, that's what I'm saying. Is there anything that you would say, no, this one, stop here. We're not going there.
Yeah, there's quite a few. The book tends to have some red lettering that says mandatory. Do not conduct a session now. But other
Mhm.
times we might say, well, there might be a risk. I want to hear from your doctor. Let the
Right.
doctor say yes. This can be a benefit, and then we'll continue. So we don't know everything about the client. The doctor will know more, and very often your client will certainly know more than you, the
Mm.
practitioner. So.
And what are some good stories that you can share that happened to clients that you worked with that changed their life?
The miracles? Well, I guess I'd start with myself.
Okay, let's hear.
Very often people come in, you asked that question at the outset. People come in, why do they come? I said, well, a lot of people were just curious. Well, I was curious. And then I had no intention at all. And intention is often important in what we do, especially if one is doing a whole bunch of sessions, but I had no intention. I had a fun session. I felt really relaxed after. My first session was so intense that I not lost track of time. Time slowed down for me. It was a Sunday night, and I had to work the next day. And my conception of time was such that I would look at the clock and think, it's only been 10 minutes. It seemed like it was a half hour or an hour. It changed my conception of time. I did another session some years, well, not even a year later, that was probably too intense. And that was a little warning sign to me, not so much to others because they kept the same kind of intense protocol. But I did not get sleep that night. I was lying in bed and hallucinating. I saw a movie on the ceiling. So and that's what happens metabolically sometimes, or what happens in the mind. That was too much. That session was too much. I guess it was kind of cool. I didn't have any ill effects from it, but that was a wake up call. Like, no, we have to measure the intensity of our sessions. But what really made a mark for me is that I had a life threatening allergy to almonds. And I didn't come in thinking that breathwork was going to do anything to that. Anytime I ate just a little bit of almond or almond extract, I'd end up in the emergency room. And I did this work intensely. I did an intense protocol. Probably nobody has equaled this because that was my personality. I did full sessions every day for about 7 weeks after my training. Every day after work, I'd come home and I would do a full session. But
With a practitioner or by yourself?
no, but at that time I was able to do self sessions by myself, and
Do you recommend self sessions for people?
eventually, yeah, we can kind of tell when somebody turns the corner, and we might say, well, you can do 15 minutes, or eventually they can do the whole hour if they're trained well enough. So I got to that point, and I had accidentally eaten almonds, and I thought, uh-oh. I, it actually happened twice. Eating cookies that had walnuts, and then they changed the recipe, it was almonds. Another time, my eyesight's not very good. I ate what I thought was garlic green beans, and it was green beans almondine. The little pieces were not garlic but almonds. So I thought, uh-oh. But I had no reaction at all, not even a slight. And I thought, well,
So
that's very strange to all of a sudden go from emergency room to nothing. But the greatest thing was my whole outlook on life. Throughout I guess maybe after I was 10 or 11, I kind of shut down. And for the into my adult life, all into my 30s, I was, one could label me angry. I was very serious. I was very driven, gloomy, depressed. I mean, all the negatives you might throw at a personality, a lot of those would have been me. But it changed. There was a certain joy that I found in life. I found purpose. I found just joy daily. I opened up. I wasn't so serious all the time. And that's the greatest thing when people notice it about you. It's like, wow, you've changed.
what would you say so let's go back to the elements, like scientific, what really happened?
Integration happens. Integration is a real thing. It's not a metaphysical concept. There is a physiological reality to what is integration. Okay. And in the book, we talk about what happens on a biochemical level or even on the quantum level. And essentially, when we have fragments of memory, we go through experiences that induce trauma symptoms. Those experiences are still fragmented, meaning they're not whole. That's what that's why we need integration, because we are essentially, through a whole series of fragmented experience, we are disintegrated. And these fragments become part of a whole. They become coherent memories. They get molded into your long-term narrative memory, or they simply get erased totally. Now, we may have a cognitive memory of something that happened, but all of the physical effects, those fragments that were in the body, they cease to exist. Literally, the memories are erased on a cellular level. We talk a bit about cellular memory and how those memories are actually formed and how they are actually erased. Okay, and it gets even more complex if you're into physics. The bioquantum effects on how that actually works throughout our whole connective tissue matrix. So yeah, it would take an hour just to start
So
describing all that.
you would say that the physical thing as far as the almonds and also changing your perspective of is basically all from the same makeup, or it's different parts?
Well,
But there's the
the immune
emotional
system.
part, and then there is actually almonds. I would say like allergic reaction is more physical
Well, how do you get an allergic reaction? Your immune system has memory,
memory.
and this work does tend to stimulate immunity when you need it, but it also modulates immunity. And in my case, it was a modulation. The memory, the overreaction to even fragments of almonds ceased to exist. There was no more response to it. It was like any other food.
The
So
cellular level.
that was a real physical thing. The memory that spurned the reaction, that immune reaction, was simply gone.
Now, there's also times where people have a lot of fear when they start doing breath work, or let's say they will feel the numbness coming in or the tingling coming in. And even though you tell them beforehand, they're fearful and they cannot let go. They're holding on to it. So it's like a two-part question. First of all, not everybody gets numb or tingly.
Right. If we do it right. If
If you
we're
do it right,
careful enough as practitioners, we can minimize that.
right? And also we notice if somebody does multiple sessions, it doesn't show up anymore.
Exactly, because their breathing
So
mechanics become more refined and they don't get themselves into that state. So it's the practitioner and the breather together that kind of bring them into that state, and the breather and practitioner together who kind of move them away. I don't get it anymore. I simply can't.
yeah, once you do it many times, you don't get it. But in the beginning, when a new client comes, there's some that are very fearful, I think, for their health. So if something happens, even though I tell them, says, "Don't worry, you won't, nothing will happen." But so what's happening is they're constantly not letting go. They're in there, they're keeping in control. So what's happening is their process of breathwork is not going to have that effect because they're holding on tight.
So,
And
Oh, go ahead.
so what I would do sometimes with clients is if they are in a very fearful state to begin with, I may do a little bit of a somatic coaching before we get into the breath work. And by that, it's getting them to relax, with some more with some calmer breaths, getting them in their bodies, and just maybe doing a mini exploration of what they're feeling, what sensations are there, what they're noticing in their bodies, and maybe do some grounding. So we kind of work through that to get them more regulated before we start the session. And sometimes that's enough.
what do you prefer before you start a session? Doing that, grounding, or the movement?
It
What
depends
do
on
you
the person.
find is depends on
Yeah,
the person.
depends on the person.
The person. Yeah, I also would say the same thing. It depends on the vibe and on the person.
Yeah, and
That's
we
that's
attune, we attune to our energy and their energy. We know what's going on.
and that's when you're talking about privately or in a group or
It would
both.
be that would be more private.
More private. And in group, which way would you say is you see the most helpful?
What I tend to see in a group setting is I have the people who are more fearful don't tend to gravitate toward the group. They gravitate toward the one-on-one sessions. So
Yeah, that's that.
it's less likely I'm going to have someone in a fearful state or in a
Yeah,
panic
they want to
state.
grab. Yeah, yeah. So there's I mean, as far as that aspect, so there's sometimes that I see clients privately, and I tell them you're going to benefit more from a group, and then there's some that I see in the group say you're going to benefit more from the private. It's something that you have to notice that in the client.
Exactly.
In the groups itself, what do you start with this, like more a grounding or more a
We usually start with movement.
movement?
So yeah, it's more movement in a group. I think there's some key things with groups. One is that it's important to thoroughly explain what they what they might experience during the session and how to do the breathing and that sort of thing. It kind of puts them at ease if they kind of know what to expect. So I think that's useful. I think with a group, it's important you have to constantly read the room. You have to be like checked in, tuned in on everybody so that everyone is getting the attention that they need and and they're in a safe container.
They've contained it. They have to feel safe. That's yeah, like I said, you have to be in tune to the room. That's how many people would you have in it the most?
Oh wow. We've breathed a lot of people in a lot of different ways. Certainly when you have a larger group, there are different ways you do things. So We actually assisted at a Greg Braden conference a couple of times,
Hmm.
and we had almost, I think it was like 264 people in the room, and we had
Uh,
probably 17 facilitators,
Hmm.
something like
oh,
that.
meaning,
So we
okay,
each,
yeah, I was gonna ask how many facilitators, so
yeah, we
that's
each had probably 15 to
15.
17
Hmm.
people that we had to take care of. So that can be done if everyone is guided and you're just taking care of it. So if you have someone that's leading the whole group and then you're just, taking care of your group, your small group, then it can work out okay.
You
Um,
need to change the protocol dramatically to keep that safe container, which means we don't do very intense sessions. You don't want 100 people suddenly get respiratory alkalosis and end up like this with their tetany. And you can't do a thorough intake either. So I went around during one of those, and we made an announcement: if you have this, or this, come to me and tell me. So yeah,
yeah.
we had to you still have to be very careful, but usually our groups are much smaller. 20, 10, 6 is the optimal for two people. But we've had larger groups where we had enough qualified help, and it works out very well. Everybody's safe, everybody's taken care of.
Yeah. And so it's
right,
just how you structure depending on
right.
how many people.
Mentioning as far as you mentioned about tetany. First of all, what causes the tetany, and
Okay.
that meaning what causes tetany, and meaning there's not really a way always to prevent that, but you can just make sure that it shouldn't go in more and more, correct?
Yeah,
But is there any worry about tetany?
yes. Yeah, there actually is. The When we breathe in session like this, we are breathing higher rate and depth than we do in quiet breathing. And because we're not moving, our muscles are not creating more CO2,
Hmm.
we're going to
Hmm.
lose some carbon dioxide in our breathing, and that's a state called hypocapnia. And
Yeah, that
that's
is
always
if
going to happen. There's only one case I could ever think of where it couldn't happen, and that's in a case of more advanced COPD. But just say everybody else loses their carbon dioxide. We want to minimize it because if it gets too intense, then you get that state called respiratory alkalosis, meaning we lose so much CO2 that the blood pH moves out of a normal range, and then you start getting all of those uncomfortable symptoms, including the tetany. The tetany is an involuntary tetanic contraction, meaning that the nerve fibers just keep firing so much, they're overlapping and they can never relax. And usually, even that's not a problem. With healthy individuals, they may be uncomfortable. Some people may be emotionally fearful. I've seen that. But usually it's not an issue. But there are certain cases where it could become an issue. And one of those things that comes to mind is those with a history of seizure. Okay? You don't want to have somebody who has, because if you take respiratory alkalosis far enough, the end result is seizure. Okay, I've never seen that in breathwork, but it has happened. I wasn't there, but it has happened because of the intensity of the protocol and the lack of sufficient intake on health history. But yeah, that's one. Another might be issues with the parathyroid gland. But it all happens because we eventually lose too much calcium. We get a temporary state of hypocalcemia in the blood, and that's what causes the muscles to dysfunction and just lock up like that. So yeah, it's something we almost always avoid. I don't see it much anymore. It's simply because of the way we work, but it does happen occasionally, and we just go with it. But if we had somebody who was more at risk, we would alter the whole session plan.
And
It's that simple.
there are ways to prevent it, certainly, just to keep the gas balance in check.
Or minimize it.
Or minimize, yeah, the CO2 and the O2, carbon dioxide and oxygen. So,
Right.
yeah, so there are different things you can do. Um, Certainly not to avoid emptying out the exhale completely is one way.
But we
So,
don't want to force the exhale. People start breathing,
Yeah.
they'll get there faster because they're obviously breathing faster. We want to slow down the breathing for one.
Yeah, and we don't want them to blow it either, where they
Yeah,
blow it
that
out.
makes
So, and then also if we can, when we move our bodies and we make some sound during a session, that also helps kind of reset those gas
reset.
pathways.
Yeah, because we are the muscles all of a sudden with the movement and the compression maneuvers we might do, the muscles are suddenly working again, and they're going to produce a little more
Produce.
carbon dioxide, and it might help to balance the equation a little bit. We would do more of that and less breathing to help rebalance. And if it does get too severe, we just stop the session. It's just that simple. So
When does a person go into a trance?
into a
So,
trance.
so this
And who
talking.
goes and who doesn't?
So what happens? Let me explain a little bit. So when we're breathing for the first part of the session, like say the first 45 minutes of the session, we're actually upregulating with the nervous system. Okay. When we can upregulate to that point, when we switch into a quieter breathing toward the end, we actually go deeper. So we go deeper into that parasympathetic state because you've upregulated to a higher sympathetic state. So we're moving from here down, and it becomes deeper when you get to that last 15 minutes. When you slow the breathing, you have longer exhales at that point. Maybe you switch into nose breathing at that time. A lot of times people have different experiences, and well, they always have different experiences, but they sometimes they have mystical experiences. So they may have a visitation from a loved one who's passed on. A lot of times they'll get clarity if they have things that they've been struggling with that they want answers for. Their clarity will come at that time. Sometimes they'll see colors or angels.
Or hallucinate, like I.
Yeah, some people have described it as a trip or
Mhm.
something really trippy.
Right.
Which
Right.
might be significant. It's not necessarily random. It may be a
Right.
past life for all we know.
Right.
So,
I also experienced once. It looked to me like certain things of a past life, and
Hmm.
I saw it was a mystical experience. Um, and like it made sense to me. That's basically what it was. So and it makes sense. Obviously, the consciousness, picks up. Consciousness stays forever. So even if it's from a previous lifetime, it's certain things make sense. But yeah, but it's. I find that usually happens when you do a group um, continuous after a few days. It's not going to happen just in a regular, or if you do it every day, that's the time when that happens. You also mentioned most of the breathing is done through your mouth, but towards the end, sometimes we go to the nose breathing. How would you differentiate why not the nose in the beginning and going straight to the mouth, or versus the two differences between mouth and nose breathing? And as far as I know, I think it targets different chakras in the body. Am I correct? That's
well, we don't really know that.
because
There,
that one goes straight up inside into your brain. The other one is going into your lower chakra, so your mouth.
well, whether we breathe through the nose or the mouth, the air passages are. If we breathe through the mouth, some air is still going through the nose, just not enough. The main reason we breathe through the mouth is because it's simply easier to exhale. We want a relaxed exhale on this. It is easier to exhale through the mouth, and it is a
That is
wider
correct.
pipe, so the breathing seems to become a little easier to teach those basic mechanics.
You can get more volume in through the mouth.
Well,
Yeah, that's
well, it's
definitely. But
easier to bring in the volume. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way.
yeah,
But we don't always start that way. Of course, we mentioned that with some folks, the mouth breathing becomes instantly too intense, even within minutes. We may start people only do a session only throughout the nose, only through the nose. So it's just sometimes mouth breathing becomes too activating the sympathetic nervous system. But generally, we find it's a quicker path to learn the mechanics and use the diaphragm. And it doesn't teach them, of course, to breathe through the mouth because we've actually had people who habitually breathe through the mouth, and using that mouth breathing during the exercise has actually changed their whole breathing mechanics so that they now can unconsciously go back and breathe through the nose as they were designed to do. So that's an interesting aspect. The exercise of breathing through the mouth paradoxically changes habitual mouth breathers to breathe through the nose. We've noticed that. So,
Is there anything that you're planning going forward, something new in the practice or new coming out with something new as far as in breathwork or books or methods in the breathwork itself?
We have a certification training program that will be coming out with the book. Excuse me. So that we plan to do some master classes for some of the more advanced things that are in the book. So lots of different plans. We have another course planned for people who've done some breathwork training but would like just to add to what they have. That's a little bit more than a master class. It would be like several master classes rolled into one. So yeah, we have a lot of things planned that we're excited about.
So am I.
the long-term goal is to bring out a full from the ground up somatic breathwork certification program, which would be minimum about 6 months. People can take up to a year to complete.
Yeah, some of
So,
it would be online, and the other part would, of course, be in person.
And as far as your groups, where do you do them mostly? How often? What do you do as far as groups?
So we do workshops, which is a basic
Workshops.
introduction to the breath work. We do those here at our home studio about once a month, and then we have another little studio in Alfred, Maine, where we also do those about once a month. So we have those regular workshops, and then we have a 5-day retreat coming up in September, and
Where
so
is that going to be?
it will be here at our
Okay.
home studio in Gilmanton Ironworks, New Hampshire, and
And how many people usually come to that?
we keep it to a small number, so we have it open for 6 people.
Hmm.
but we also travel. I mean, we're
Yeah,
obviously in New Jersey quite a bit.
Jersey.
We travel anywhere. I led a training in one spring in France and another one in Sweden. So we'll go anywhere.
Anyway,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, wherever there's
That's
interest, we'll create it for you.
okay. So what is something that you want to tell to the audience that going forward, telling them what they should be, you know, looking forward in a breathwork in general, or like guidance or a practice for a daily practice, even if you're new to this, or what's the best thing for people that have no clue what breathwork is? How should they start? What type of practice should they do? And maybe to inch in later into going into bigger programs. But even people that were in a program, what should they do on a daily basis or weekly basis in order to, what would it help them? What would you advise, invite people to do?
Well, I think the first point is if somebody is exploring breath for the first time, especially a more integrative approach, it's best to do hands-on work like a workshop. But again, we talked about clustering them together. A retreat, if it fits in their lifestyle, would be of the most benefit. And then after a while, they can learn to do shorter self sessions, and eventually, when they grow enough in that personal practice, do their own longer sessions. But the idea is to make it part of one's life. We can say, obviously, physiologically, breath is life, but breathing should just be part of your lifestyle. And if one becomes disciplined in the practice, lives will change noticeably. Others will notice, and you will notice yourself that you are a different person. You have transformed in some dramatic way. And then from there, it's not a one off. It's not like, okay, I got here, I can stop. It's like exercising. Well, I exercised to get healthy, now I exercise to maintain my health. Well, the same with breathing. You need to have a maintenance protocol, and it should be every day. I don't care if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Maybe eventually do longer sessions once in a while, but keep it part of of the lifestyle. Make it a habit, and then that it'll always be there when things come up in one's life. Hard times, emotional stress, physical issues. The breathing will always be there as a resource.
So I would say someone who's just starting out, something very simple they could do is to put one hand on their belly and one hand on their chest and just take some deep breaths and feel where the breath is going, because it should breathe all the way down into the lower abdomen and all the way up into the chest. So yeah, just take, 3 breaths, 5 minutes of breath, and just kind of become more aware of where the breath is going.
Yeah,
And just bring in the awareness.
Do they also focus on having a connected breath, chest and belly together, or
I would just focus on awareness to begin
yeah.
with,
one with
and then to work with someone, you know.
Yeah, that little
totally
exploration might be just the little impetus they need to take that next step to come and do some real hands-on work.
in their work?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Once you breathe, you're in a different state of presence and awareness. Beautiful. So, what's the best way people can contact you? You can say it. You're also going to print it in the actually in the on the bottom of the video. We're going to be printing it. So, if you want to, is it by phone number, by email, or is there a website? Give us what.
So yes,
Great.
so our website is www.blissfuljourneywellness.com, and that will take you to everything else that's going on. We will have a special landing page for the book. We plan a launch party in the next couple of weeks, so we'll let you know the date for that. We'll have some specials going on, and it'll be fun to launch the book out there. When we have retreats and other things, those will be listed on the main website, and those may also take you to a special page. So
Hmm.
yeah, so the best way is the website. That's
So,
www.blissfuljourneywellness.com, or info at would be the email for
okay,
specific
beautiful.
questions.
Okay, so when is your next trip to New Jersey?
We don't have one planned right now.
What?
I'm
Okay,
thinking probably maybe late summer.
wait summer.
So we usually go. We have a lovely couple who is happy to host us, and we love to do private sessions there. So that's something that,
Great.
yeah.
Okay. I am very happy for this beautiful podcast and explaining it so nicely, and that everybody should be able to understand what's going on. And excited for the book coming out. And keep up your good work because you're doing great work. And it's actually making also a better world out there. When you breathe and you're working with the people that are grounded, that
Mhm.
definitely helps and know what they're doing. So I
Thank
want to
you.
thank you for this interview here, and hopefully we'll do many more.
Okay.
And
Thank you so
Thank
much for
you,
having
Mendy. Yeah.
us. And I appreciate all the work you do as well.
Hmm.
You
thank you,
have fabulous contributions to the world. So thank you for
thank
being
you,
here.
Yes.
thank you. Good luck.
All right.
Take care. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.